You ever seen the moment where the Florida man becomes like an actual living being human? Well, that might be the actual way to personify the game we just watched. Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, and today we break down everything that we saw at the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. Florida, they improve to 8-5 on the year with a 33-8 win. Real quickly, make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification down below, and of course, hit subscribe to the channel because we talk college football every single day. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave at Mock 10 Sports. Me at Mr. Cole Thompson. Check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. This post-game show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app and use the promo code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just for college football games. This is not just for college basketball games. This is for the NBA. This is for the NHL. This is for your favorite concert, your favorite comedians coming to town. We just watched Shane Gillis kill it on College Game Day. Why don't you go ahead and kill it at one of his shows by using the Game Time app, using promo code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. Dave, just a weird game. Like top to bottom, the score does not define how much of a dominant performance it was from Florida. The countless miscues in the first half. This kind of went exactly how I thought it was going to go. A sluggish first half from Florida where they broke away. I did think that Tulane was going to have a little bit more dynamic season on offense. They did get in the end zone late with a touchdown pass to Mario Williams. But besides that, just honestly, the score will not indicate how dominant a performance this was from Florida. But still, we got to talk about why it didn't end up being a higher scoring process than it actually should have been.
Yeah, it felt like I tweeted it out. It felt like the biggest 9-0 beat down just to open up the second half that I'd seen. It was like you looked at the stats and it was just from the get-go, just pure dominance. I mean, total yards tonight, 194 yards for Tulane. I know Darian Mensah is in Durham right now or probably maybe somewhere else, but he is not playing for the Tulane Green Wave tonight, as we saw.
No.
Ty Thompson, no offense to the kid not going in. That was a rough day. That was a rough day from the quarterback.
That is the day that you do not need when you're saying, I'm going into the transfer portal right after. That is the day that you do not want when you say those words.
No, you're 100% right, Bear. I mean, 11 for 29, 125, one touchdown, 3 interceptions. Again, not going to go pull on that kid. But you're right. Florida felt like they kind of walked through that first half, controlled most of it, came out and just completely dominated the second half. I mean, you got the meaningless 8 points at the end, but before that, it was 27-0. They outscored them in the second half. And Bear, it could have been much worse if you don't have the 2 DJ Lagway interceptions, and then especially the one in the red zone there. But I'm like you. Felt like Florida controlled this one the whole way. It was really never in doubt. There was never any moment where you're like, man, Tulane could really do it. Like it never had that. Even when it was still 6-0, 9-0, you never had that. All Florida dominated. And how about that defense? Again, I know it wasn't against Darian Mensah, but man, guys like Miles Graham stepping up, making some big time plays. Hey, 4-game win streak to end the season. No one thought you were going to finish 8-5, myself included. Especially, I mean, after the A&M game, we were all writing Billy's obituary. I mean, a lot of people for the season were writing his obituary, but Florida gets to ride some good momentum into 2025 there, Bear.
They get to carry some weight over. And again, this was still a Tulane team that featured a 1,000-yard rusher in Mekhi Hughes, one of the best group of 5 wide receivers in Mario Williams, who's going to be playing on Sundays. And it was a solid overall performance. Dave, just let me break this down for you. They had 14 more first downs. They had a 50% better rate on third down conversions. They finished with nearly 364 more yards of offense, 305 to 125 passing, 8.7 to 4.2 yards per attempt, 224 to 69 rushing yards. And the 2 areas that really kept this thing close, at least in the first half, 9 penalties for 95 yards versus 3 penalties for 33, turnovers, 2 in the first half. Like, that's not a winning formula. And what's really frustrating is you still saw some of those same mental mistakes to when we go back to week 2, when we go back to week 3 against Texas A&M, and they're down and they're trudging and they're trying to find some type of identity. We're saying, what is Billy doing? This is a year 3 team. This is a team that should not be shooting itself in the foot consistently by ill-advised plays and by simple errors. I mean, there were 4 holding calls, and then you go look at that one drive where they nearly capitalized and get in the end zone in the fourth quarter. Shamir Dike is nearly open. They find a way to get in. Then 2 more holding calls, and instead of it being 2nd and 2 or 3rd and 3, it's now 3rd and 14. It's little things like that at the end of the year, you're not complaining because if you have 2 significant wins over 2 top 25 ranked teams, you're able to close out your season on a 4-game winning streak. More importantly, you're carrying a lot of this momentum going into next year. You saw the growth of several of your young players. but it just leaves a sour taste in your mouth just a little bit. Like, we could have beaten the AAC runner-up, a team that for many of us, we were thinking was going to be a college football playoff dark horse as the Group of 5 champion. And yet here we are, and we're only up by 6 going into half. And it's not because of them. Our defense did our job. It's because of our offensive instability and our inability to execute properly on just simple little things, like making sure that we're not holding a football player at the line of scrimmage, making sure that we're not downfield with an ineligible player. It's those little things that drive Florida fans crazy, and it's why we go right back to the well of, can Billy figure it out in year 4? Because you got year 3, you stabilized the roster in a lot of different ways, but my God, just this shouldn't be what the score says.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, no, yeah, it's a fair statement, but I'd agree with it. It's 33-8, but it felt like if you watched the whole game, it was much worse than it should have been.
It should have been like 55-6.
Like you said, that they were ahead of the sticks, and like you said, you get a legal man downfield, you get a holding, it's like, all right, man, now it's 2nd and 14 or 3rd and 14. It's like, all right, here comes Trey Smack when we could have been coming out and getting 6 instead of settling for 3. Right. Wasn't even their best performance. Again, some typical bowl games. And Florida was missing some guys on defense. Obviously, Zach Pyburn had transferred to LSU. So they were missing some guys too. Tulane, obviously, we talked about Thompson. But overall, you got to be fired up about kind of the end of the year. Again, if you're a Florida fan, you can gripe. It's not always pretty. But again, 8-5. You have your quarterback of the future rolling into the 2025 season. Similar schedule. You go to Miami next year. Add in some extra pieces. We did one on J. Michael Sturdivant earlier. We like that addition. So I think Florida's heading in the right direction. I don't think anyone saw them winning 4 straight in the year, certainly with a win, the big win, the headliner over Ole Miss.
If you would have told me that they won 8 games, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing. Now, would it have been shocking if you said that Graham Mertz was the one beating? I mean, would it be shocking that DJ Lagway was the one that nearly beat Tennessee, came back and beat LSU, beat Ole Miss? Yeah, maybe a little bit, because if you just figured that Graham Mertz being the veteran would get that shit done. But still, I don't think it was that shocking to say 8 wins was on the table with the right formula. I think the way they got those 8 wins, closing out the year against a top 25 win against LSU, a top 25 win against Ole Miss, a win against the Tulane squad at the end of the season that was trudging at the very end of the day. They had question marks when it came to John Summerall's status, Darian Mentz's status, what was going to happen with Mekhi Hughes at running back. There still is an opportunity for him to potentially enter the transfer portal. He will get a lot of interest if he were to leave New Orleans overnight. But still, you get 4 wins to close out the year. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. I think that you also now know there's still so much that we have to see improve for DJ Lagway. Because the one interception, I understand you're thrown under pressure. You're trying to get the ball out in time. You're thrown into coverage. Maybe you don't see the guy, the linebacker at the last second. But the second interception, you're at the 7-yard line. I mean, that's a double turnover, in my opinion. Because of not only are you taking off points to where it could be a field goal, but you're taking off points when it becomes a touchdown. And it would be one thing to hear Graham Mertz is opting out of this bowl game because he's preparing for the NFL draft. This is DJ Lagway's first career full-time start. No questions. He is in. He is locked in. He is our guy for moving forward. But this is now your 5th game in a row, and you've been playing pretty significantly better since coming back from the injury when Aiden Warder came on in and played against Texas. So it's like, these are still mental mistakes that for a young player, I think you're allowed to make. But at the same time, I feel like that we should be holding a little bit more of a standard to DJ Lagway, especially for what he has shown at times against more quality competition this year. And those are just errant throws that I don't care how many reps you've played. If you've been in college football for at least a hot cup of coffee, you should not be making those type of passes inside the red zone at all.
No, I agree. True freshman being a true freshman, at some point, some of those warts rear their ugly head at times. Again, I can't make it. It'd be interesting to see, ask him what he was seeing in that. Like you said, you can accept the first one. The red zone one, though, man, come on. Those are killers, so we can't be doing that. You're right. It makes you feel a little worse that, like you said, if this was Mertz opting out, this was his first start. Again, those can't happen. He knows that. Billy Napier and them know that. So I'm sure they'll get that polished up as we head into spring ball there. But I keep going back 8-5, still some things to work on. But again, you couldn't ask for anything better. Again, some things to gripe about. You're heading into year 4, but you got some things to fix too. I mean, look, Ron Roberts handling the entire defense looks really good tonight. I mean, I think you're gonna be fired up for Miles Graham. Go ahead.
Let's talk about that, actually. The defense performance tonight and the defensive performance the last, really, I would say 3 games, especially from the 4th quarter of the Ole Miss game on. I think has been the most underlying story for Florida this year, just the way that they have been able to force quarterbacks into making mistakes. and it's going to be a veteran unit next year. Ron Roberts isn't going anywhere. They're going to hire somebody to replace Austin Armstrong. Now, it may not be the same type of role of co-defensive coordinator, but they're going to find somebody to come on into the staff. I feel like that's once again going to be kind of the backbone of this team that will carry them deeper and deeper. And if they can add in some pieces, just a couple of rotational guys that will fit in the way that you lost Jack Pyburn, you bring in somebody that can be part of that rotational defensive line. We're talking about a roster that should feel really confident about not only its quality of players, but its overall depth too. Because if I really feel like that when you look at Florida's defense from week 1 to week 14, that might be one of the most improved units in the SEC for all of 2024.
Yeah, I mean, today, and take it again, grain of salt with Ty Thompson is one of the worst quarter performances I've seen all year. But 3 turnovers over downs, 3 and outs, and 8 points. And for the most part, they were pretty meaningless points, really, just for whoever the announcer was said it right, just for bookkeeping purposes. We're going to add this here. But you're right. They have some things to build on defensively. It'll be interesting to see, like, where was the missing dynamic with Ron Roberts and Austin Armstrong? Let's call a spade a spade. You don't just leave the University of Florida as a co-DC just to go be the DC at Houston. Like, no offense to the Cougar fans that are listening to this.
I say be careful. You're in my neck of woods.
Yeah, it's in your name. I'm going to get cute shot tonight, Bear. But it just doesn't add up. So it obviously came in. Ron Roberts obviously trumped that. Again, it looked good today. Right? Plenty to add on there. Got to be fired up about the potential of the defense heading into 25.
The other thing that's just really important is you got to 8 wins. I mean, honestly, how many people in the national media, how many people here thought that was even possible? I don't think many people thought it was improbable, but definitely was certainly in that conversation of if it happens, a lot of things went your way. You want to know what went your way is that the buy-in from Billy and the players that want to play for Billy. And I think that's something that carried a lot of momentum, especially when you heard Scott Strickland come out with the announcement saying, we're keeping Billy around for 2025. We don't care what the outside noise says. He's not going up for his job. Because in that moment, you watched as the players kind of turn the corner. And they're like, okay, our coach is going to be back here next year. We got to prove to him that it was worth holding out hope for us. And more importantly, we got to show the rest of the organization, the rest of the fan base, the rest of the boosters, that we're worth talking about going into the offseason. And they were 4 straight wins to close out the year. You figure out who your starting quarterback is. You get to see the growth and maturation from a guy like Jaden Baugh, who's going to be your bell cow back in 2025. You get to see some younger players step on up, including your tight end, including your wide receiver in Mizell. You get to see your defense kind of turn the corner.
Yeah, Barry, you get 4 out of 5 offensive linemen back.
This was a team that never gave up hope, which I think speaks multitudes of volume for what Billy is as a leader in the clubhouse. The problem is that as much as you can give the rah-rah, high go-to attitude speeches, it's got to translate to wins. And it's got to translate to wins at a place like Florida. There is a standard down in Gainesville.
Is there a number he has to get to next year in the regular season?
I think, again, you got to at least go 8-5. I think you got to go 8-4, probably 9-3, just to be able to save some face, especially with the way that you closed out the year. But also it's going to be based off of how well were you able to add in some pieces in the portal. Because you got a top 12 recruiting class. I mean, the fact that they were at the very bottom about a month ago in the SEC, and they climbed all the way up, and they were able to flip multiple kids from Auburn, flip kids from Arkansas, flip kids from South Carolina, flip kids from Florida State, flip kids from Oregon, flip kids from from UCF. They took players that are on their schedule for next season, and they hurt their records as much as they helped their own. So I feel like that 9-3 is at least the ceiling you want to get to. 8-4, but if it's some close call wins again or some close call losses against teams like, I don't know, maybe it is an Ole Miss, maybe it is a Texas A&M on the road, but then you get a signature win over an LSU in Tiger Stadium. It's little things like that I think will play a lot of weight into it. But the vibes are good. I mean, regardless of how you want to feel about Billy Napier as a leader and executor of the play calling, which again, there has to be a conversation about that first half. The struggles that we saw with the play designs, that still makes me a little uneasy, makes me a little queasy when it comes to talking about what his overall persona is going into next year. Yeah. You got to feel at least confident that the fact that there is no relentlessly unquit nationality persona in this locker room is going to transpire into potential multitude of wins next year. And again, the way that we have seen some teams play with this no quit mentality in the past has led them to close out the year on a positive note, make a deep run for a better bowl game. And in a 12-team playoff scenario, a better run is a 12 spot in the college football playoff. And I think Florida belongs in that conversation, not based off of what they have, but based off the inner makings of how this roster is built on persona-wise. But they also got to have the right Jimmys and Joes to be able to get this job done.
Yeah, so you want a better start in September. That starts off with LIU, the Sharks, baby,
Yeah.
coming into Ben Hill Griffin. Then you got South Florida at LSU, which all of us are not accustomed to that game being this early in the season, and then at Miami, and then you're off. So like those 4 games again, I mean, are likely to define your season. We said the same thing this year. You bounce back, but I think it'll be a little different this year. Florida fans are tired. I think we don't want the late October, November push just to get to 7, 8 wins and 7 to go get 8 in a bowl game. That's old. That's run its course. I'm with you. He's going to have to get 8, 9 next year. That's going to have to mean at least a 3-1 start. Realistically, a 3-1 start. Because again, that's totally unrealistic. Back-to-back weeks to expect you to go win in Baton Rouge, then go to Hard Rock Stadium and win too. So it's 3-1 should be the realistic goal of this Florida team with DJ Lagway leading them to open up the first 4. And I probably think that's probably necessary. Because I mean, again, your other trips, you host Texas, go at A&M, you host Mississippi State, you get Georgia, obviously in Jacksonville, at Kentucky, at Ole Miss. Tennessee much later than the year, second to last game of the year. That's usually the first conference game.
Let me ask you on this because it's so weird. It's weird to talk about this. What's weirder to you, that Tennessee is so late in the year next year, that LSU is so early in the year?
Man, they flip-flop those games.
They flipped them, right? It's weird.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, probably since I've been going. Tennessee, Florida's always been a September game to me, so probably that.
I still think it's LSU being in week 2 or week 3. It's just
like I remember them playing in October growing up, but like Tennessee. I mean, dude, people used to get mad about that in the '90s, because that game used to just be for the East, and it was like, great, we got the showdown between Spurrier, Fulmer here in week 3. Now it's okay. Who else in the East? Because Georgia wasn't really challenging then.
Yeah,
but to the point. No, you're right, bro. I think 8-4, 9-3 is going to be the expectation. It's going to be tough. That schedule is going to be tough once again. But I think those first 4 games are going to set the tone. Got to have a 3-1 start.
Here's the problem, Dave. It may be tough, but at the same time, there's now an actual blueprint of how to get it done. And that's going to be, I think, what a lot of fans are looking at when they say, hey, we brought you back for another year. More importantly, you still have a ton of the same players that were part of this roster turnaround last year. A lot of the money that is emphasized at NIL is on these younger guys taking that next step forward. Lagway, Baugh, Mizell, Wilson. You just were able to go land another Wilson, the 5-star cat from Oregon. He's leaving Eugene to come down to Gainesville. You added in a lot of players in the transfer portal. We held on hope. You showed us that there was a blueprint. Now it's time to deliver, because if we didn't have to hold out for you, we could have paid the $26 million buyout, but we said that you were our guy, so you got to be able to buy in. I agree with you. You have to have a fast start going into next year. Basically, the way that you look today against Tulane, minus one of those red zone turnovers, that's how you probably need to start out next season going into the first 4 weeks before you go to the bye.
No, yeah, I agree. And what you mentioned, some of those nitpicky procedural pre-snap penalties, is just – like you said, we don't talk about that, and we're all guilty of it in previews, summer predictions, going into season. But like you said, little stuff like that just adds up. Those penalty yards, it like turns into a phenomenal. You're ahead of the stick, 2nd and 4, 5-yard, 10-yard penalty, 2nd and 14, 3rd and 15. Those are just things Florida has to get worked out. And I'll say this: they have 4 starters back on the offensive line for offensive line coach Robinson.
Already a big plus.
It's that right side again, though, Bear. I mean, they're replacing Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon, who we both remember came from San Diego State, who we thought was going to be the answer. We thought, at least myself, I thought Damian George moving to that interior right guard spot was going to help them. It didn't. It's been since Billy's been there. That right side has been their kryptonite. For whatever reason, here's another opportunity. You got to go get it fixed. But the positive thing here, they haven't had 4 returning starters on the offensive line since he's been there. So you got a lot to work with. Love my guy, Rod Kearney. I remember him recruiting him when I was in Orlando. He plays for them a lot. So like you said, Barry, it's a good foundational piece, especially with your quarterback, because you got a lot of people who gravitate towards him, even going back to his high school days in Willis, Texas. But you still have to, like you mentioned, fill out some holes, and you got to start fast.
A lot of things that need to be worked on. Before we get on out of here, Dave, as we're going to do through every single game that we talk about in the SEC, let's give out a grade for the 2024 season. The final time we will be talking about this version of Florida football. What say you? What was the grade for 2024?
Man, it's almost like you went into the midterm and it was just like, no, just not getting it
exactly
done.
Right.
Yeah, go to the principal is calling you to the office. We're about to expel you. And then it's like, man, it's got the highest GPA in the class in the second semester. I mean, overall, where it equals out, I'm going to go 8-5 finish now. I'm gonna go a B minus just because the start. I don't like the start, so I got to penalize you from some extent. But the 4 wins in the year, the 1 over Ole Miss, knocking them out of the playoffs, then you finish it off today. pretty solid across the board outside of, like you said, the red zone, interception, and the penalties. But I'll go B-.
You went to the principal's office. You got the belt. You got the old belt too. Like Bertha that has been waiting back there since the 1950s. That leather is so worn in.
Like Miss Trunchbull.
It leaves stings. It leaves marks. It was terrible. Like literally, they could hear the screams from the chokey. That's what you had, Florida. And then it was like, you went home, you realized that the beating that you get at school is only the beginning of the beating that you're going to get at home. And you don't want to feel that way again. So Billy got his shit together and he turned the team around. And the fact that everyone else bought in, you saw, as you said, the highest GPA grade in the second half of the semester, which brings you out to a solid B-. You got 2 quality wins to close out your season. You got a win over a quality AAC program. You also were able to make sure that you showed growth and potential with DJ Lagway very early on. The Tennessee game is one that I will always stand out upon because if I do feel like if you get that game and you go for 2 and you win that one, we are talking completely differently about Florida down the stretch. They are a top 25 ranked team. They are a team that's playing with a lot of fire. If you do have DJ playing in that game against Texas, I still think Texas wins, but it's a lot closer of a call. It's definitely more of a 4-quarter battle. So I give you a solid B-. You're never going to taste the leather of the Big Bertha again. You're going into 2025 with your ass clean and a fresh set of eyes, ready on going to a national championship. Solid B-. But for Dave Shumate, I am Cole Thompson. Make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification down below. And of course, subscribe to the channel because we talk college football, break down every single SEC game, live post game. Make sure that you follow us on the socials, link in the description. Follow Dave at Mach 10 Sports, me at Miss Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at SECunfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate, I am Cole Thompson. Florida, you close out the year with a signature win in college football. Peace.